we were in chapter 7 where God was preparing for this great battle that we're starting into in 8 and 9, 10 and 11. They will eventually bring us to the conclusion of the first half of Revelation before we move on to the second half. But last week, do you remember what God was doing with the church? Last week, God was sealing, Sealing, his elect, his disciples, his church. What was he doing that for? What was the purpose or the intent to put that seal on his followers, his believers?
They are secure in that relationship. They're safe. They will not be harmed by anything
that's coming forward. Absolutely. They will not be harmed by anything that God is now going to bring to those who have persecuted the church. He's not removing them out of the world, but he has sealed them so that they can live in the world without being a part of the world. And so as we move from that, now the question that's always been asked, what are you going to do with those who have persecuted the church? God, where is justice? You ever feel that way? Where is justice in this world? Well, today, yes, Harold.
You know what is so interesting is that the Apostle Paul, he's included in that.
Mm-hmm.
He persecuted the church.
He did. But he does not continue to be one of the ones who refuse to repent of who they are. That's what we're going to see today, which makes the end of this lesson so sad and tragic. Have you ever known someone that you felt like needed to know the Lord and nothing you did, nothing anyone did, nothing anyone ever said caused them to move an inch? They are so full of themselves and so full of their certainty that they don't need God, that there's nothing that can be said that will change them. We've all known somebody like that, right? And so as we look at these lessons today, they're terrible in the sense of picturing and feeling as though you can understand what they're going through with the judgment of God. Now, as we finish up chapter 11, when we come back in 2 weeks, we'll do 10 and 11, I hope, maybe. That will bring us, believe it or not, from the birth of Christ to the consummation of this dispensation we're in at his second return. And so then John's going to just act on it and build it bigger and take us to the next, to the very end of Revelation. But we're getting information today of what's coming, what is, and what has been. And so as we look at this, I want us to think about if we were a part of this vision of John's, or if we were part of the audience that he's going to be sending this to, taking this to be read. So you're not in 2025. I want you to go back and think of yourselves in the first century AD, because this is very fantastic information that we're getting. And it really, remember what I told you last week? We have to use our imaginations to grasp the hugeness, the extent of what Paul is trying to make very amazing to his readers and to his people that's going to understand this in the church. So today we're going to look at what happens to the persecutors of the church. What would you want to have happen to the persecutors of the church? By the way, that's you. Make it personal.
For them to repent.
Want them to repent, be sorry.
They receive grace.
Give them grace. Huh.
See, I'm pointing out who it was.
Jesus, come to the Lord at some point.
Mm-hmm.
You understand.
Well, we are moving into a time that's going to be a little bit interesting. I want us to read the first verse of chapter 8. Who has that?
When the Lamb broke the seventh seal on the scroll, there was a silence throughout heaven for about half an hour.
We had silence in heaven for half an hour. And Tom and I are smiling at each other because there used to be a joke that there were no women in heaven for that 30 minutes.
That's probably true. I mean, honestly.
Well, today it's proved it's man, not woman.
So, and I admit I had to smile the whole time I was reading that and thinking about it.
Probably explain that in relations where there's no male and female.
Thank you. Good recovery. What kind of silence do you think this is, and what would be the intent? All of the, we've seen the throne, and we've been in the throne room, and there's all these people and angels worshiping and singing praises and doxologies to God and to the Lamb. And then all of a sudden, just before this seventh seal will be done, we have silence.
Expectation.
Expectant silence.
No, expectation of what's coming.
Okay, expectation for what's coming.
I think it's that silence is the reality that things will change. And it was a deafening silence. It's just an abnormal experience
Mm-hmm.
compared to everything you described.
It's a good explanation for it. Thank you, Van. A solemn, almost like you're at a funeral and you're waiting and you're not exactly holding your breath, but it's close. Because what's coming is not joyous. It's not praiseworthy. And you know what's coming and it's terrible. And that's the silence. And then we have the trumpet. Let's read 2 through 5. Jamie, would you read those?
Yes. And I saw the 7 angels who stand before God, and 7 trumpets were given to them. And another angel came and stood at the altar, holding a golden censer, and made incense when given to him, and he might add it up to the prayers of all of the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints went up before God out of the angel's hand. And the angel took the censer, and he filled it with fire and of the altar and threw it to the earth. And there followed peals of thunder and sounds and flashes of lightning and an earthquake. And the 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets appeared themselves to sound them. And the first sounded, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth.
Okay, stop there. Did I say 7? I meant 6. Let's stop there. The 7 angels who had the 7 trumpets prepared themselves to sound them, meaning judgment's coming. Remember, trumpets are always blown before a war, a battle, judgment. In the Old Testament, it always came before judgment. was coming. And so we have these 7 angels. They're not just any angels. These are strong angels that have presented themselves to the throne to be the ones, the messengers of the judgment of God that's coming on the earth and to mankind. And so they're not doing it yet because they've not been given permission from God. But we have this additional angel who comes before the throne holding a censer for incense. And this angel doesn't have anything in there. It's given to her or to the angel. And so that would be the prayers of the martyrs or the saints who have been before the altar of God. And what have they been asking God? When are you going to avenge us? When? And so that's in the censer. But then also, there's something else that's put in the censer. And Dr. Hendrickson suggested it was the intercession of Jesus Christ for the saints and for those on earth. And so we now have that mixed together because Jesus intercedes for us before the throne, doesn't he? And so that mixed with the other. And then what does the angel put in it?
Filled with fire from the altar.
Yes. And so those prayers are offered up to God with a scent, a beautiful aroma to God. And out of that aroma that God has coming up to him, he now is ready to act. He's now ready to begin the persecution of those who have persecuted the church. So as we look at the first angel with the trumpet, it's going to become very clear to us what God is about to do on earth. So let's start in verse 7, just verse 7, and read the first angel. Lindsay, do you have that?
The first angel sounded his trumpet, and there came hail and fire mixed with blood, and it was hurled down to the earth. A third of the earth was burned up, a third of the trees were burned up, and all the green grass was burned up.
So the first angel sounds his trumpet, and what does it create? Hell and fire mixed with blood, indicating there's going to be death associated with it. And it only burns up a third of the earth. Now you remember a third is always used when it's just partial. It's not everything, it's just partial. And so we have a third of the earth that is burned up, and a third of the trees are burned up, and all the green grass is burned up. Now, we're going to see the grass later, so please keep this in mind that this is symbols of those things that provide something important to living creatures, whether animal or human, and they're all gone. A third of them are gone. That means those people or animals that depended on that third of the earth are in trouble. So as we think about going through these, they're very short, very quick, but they all have something very significant that it's happening to the earth. Now, the earth has been in our news in the last few years. People are all running around the world trying to save the earth. And that's really an act in futility because we don't have control. God's the only one who has control of the earth. He created it, and he'll use it for what he desires, and that is to persecute right now, as we're going to see in these 2 chapters. And then we saw last week he was going to destroy it. We didn't need it because we're not going to be here. He created it for a purpose, for mankind. When he comes back at the consummation of the age, we're not going to need it anymore. And so it talks about a third of the earth being destroyed. And then we go to the second angel in verse 8. Somebody have that? Would they read it for us, please?
The second angel sounded his trumpet, and something like a huge mountain, all ablaze, was thrown into the sea. A third of the sea turned to blood. A third of the living creatures in the sea died. A third of the ships were destroyed.
Okay. Now what did he attack? The ocean. Now it wasn't a mountain. It said it was like a mountain to give you a sense of how huge it would have been. What does that do to our living creatures and to our world if a third of the sea is destroyed? It's running red with blood. The animals are all dead. That's in that part of it. And the ships and the people on those ships are all destroyed. We're getting kind of serious now, aren't we? So we no longer have those living creatures of the sea. Can you remember a time when we heard of a catastrophe of dead sea animals and washing up on the shores? We've had that in our lifetime, in my lifetime. Do you ever think that these natural disasters are not so natural after all? That they are from God for the sole purpose of punishment and warning. I wrote down a few that I found and could remember. Just last week I read that, or I think it was last week, in Indonesia, a mount there, a volcano erupted, sending ash 6,500 feet into the air. They couldn't even fly airplanes in because of it. The darkness was overwhelming. And at Berkeley in California, there was an Antifa riot attacking a Christian meeting of conservative students. These are catastrophes that are happening in our world that we are unheard of to most of us. Dr. Hendrickson, being much older than I am and deceased at this point in life, remembered the Ohio flood of 1913, which was evidently tragic and devastating to that part of the United States. Katrina, most of you remember that, right? 2005. How devastating was that? Did you read anything in the papers or hear anything on the news that was truly an act of God to get people to turn to God? Well, that's what we're learning in Revelation. God uses to turn an unrepentant world to Him. I thought about that and I thought, well, why would He do that? And then it dawned on me, He can't even get Christians to pray sometimes unless they have a tragedy or an urgent need. We turn to God in urgent needs, don't we? And so the world, God figuring human nature is all the same, He figures if they have enough tragedy, they might repent. He's hopeful. Well, let's look at the third trumpet and read it. That is 10 and 11. Lindsay, would you read those two?
The third angel sounded his trumpet, and a great star, blazing like a torch, fell from the sky on a third of the rivers
If you would look, somebody look in Matthew 24, and I believe it's 28. It ties in with this very well to find out what that blazing star that fell from heaven, who that is. Do you have it? Tom, do you have that?
I have Matthew 24:28, but I'm not sure that's
Let me look.
it says wherever there is a carcass of altars.
Read the one just before it, then, I think. Oh, after it, yeah.
Immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky, and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. There will appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then all the peoples of the earth will be able to see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. Far enough?
That's far enough. The star that's falling from heaven is presumed to be Satan, who's coming down, and that he's handed the key to the abyss. The abyss being what we would term hell, which after the second judgment, hell is referred to as of water, of fiery water. Mm-hmm. So,
Lake of fire.
yes, thank you.
Oh, by the way, there are those who count those tragedies not only as natural events, but as acts of God. Just read your insurance.
Yeah, they don't pay if it's an act of God, I think is why that's in there.
But they have that in there for
Mhm.
protection against themselves, against those acts.
Well, this one fell on a third of the rivers and the springs. What does that indicate? Where do we get life from? Water. We've now had the earth, a third of the earth, a third of the sea, and now we have the inland waters and rivers and springs where people get their drinking water, their water to cook with, their water to live by, has been attacked. And the name of that angel is Wormwood. Do you know what wormwood means? Bitter. And so the waters are made bitter and toxic. You can't drink them. Many drank them and became bitter in their heart and soul. Others died. And so he talks about this being a picture of people filled with bitterness and how it destroys who they are. It's very interesting to look at that and see it not just as wormwood, but what it is significant of. And it says, many people died from the waters because they had become bitter and toxic within themselves. It's interesting, I thought, in our day today, and understanding that Revelation is relevant from the first century to the consummation of history. It covers all of it. But today, people are so angry and so bitter and so divided. Families, friends can't be together. They don't agree on anything. Everything is so filled with bitterness that it makes you wonder if we should check our water supplies. You know, seriously. Yes.
There's an amazing verse that talks about the root of bitterness in Hebrews 12:15. Hebrews 12:15.
Would you read that?
It says, "See to it that no one fails to obtain the grace of God, so that no root of bitterness spring up and cause trouble, and by it many become defiled."
Wow. That's an exact picture of this. Thank you. Any other comments? Let's look then at the 12th verse, the fourth angel and the fourth trumpet. Let's read just verse 12.
The fourth angel sounded his trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them turned dark. A third of the day was without light, and also a third of the night.
Now, I know with the time change, we all feel like that's happened. I get it. But can you imagine our day being cut by a third? No light at day or night to be able to work or go and come as we do? Do you know how depressing darkness can be? It's one of the form of tortures, I think, in war they have used, is to keep someone isolated in darkness where you lose your ability to see.
We really, if I could interject, we really seldom fathom what darkness really is, the true absence of light.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a cave one time as a Boy Scout, Cottonwood Cave in Oklahoma, and they took us into this giant room. We crawled through mud. We were in the cave for 8 hours. But in this giant room, and we just had these little carbide lamps on our head, they had us extinguish all of our lights. And you literally could not see your hand, right? There was no light at all. And then the guide lit just a little light, and the entire cave lit up. So that tiniest spark of light made all of that difference.
Mm-hmm.
So even at night, for us, we have at least the stars, sometimes the moon, unless it's a cloudy night. And then there's some reflection of whatever the image light is.
Mm-hmm.
But the complete absence of light is almost unfathomable to most human beings.
That's true. What we need to see with these trumpets is the importance and significance that darkness is reflective of the darkness in our world. And it's beginning to be extinguished. We're losing light as this goes on. So God has sent troubles on the earth, the sea, the inland water and falls. And now he's even taken out part of those things that he established for us to keep our lives moving and going. The sun, the moon, and the stars. A third of them. I don't even like it when the moon is going through those stages and you only have a sliver. You know, it's pretty dark out there. And so you think about this. How would you view, or what do you picture when you think about these things happening? What would you think? Oh, well, it's not on my turf, so it's okay. It hadn't come here yet, so we're fine. I mean, a third of the earth, who knows where that is? But it affects everybody. So the trumpets, we're down to the fourth trumpet. And we're going to take an intermission. Have you ever been to a movie or a play and they take an intermission where you can stretch and move and then sit back down and they'll start again? Well, the intermission, they have a program for you to watch. If you look at verse 13, it says, "Then I looked and I heard a solitary eagle flying in mid-heaven for all to see, saying with a loud voice, 'Woe, woe, woe. Great wrath is coming to those who dwell on the earth because of the remaining blasts of the trumpets which the three angels are about to sound, announcing even greater judgments to come.'" These have been terrible. but they've not really hit us yet, have they? The ones that we just went through, those trumpets. They sound terrible, but we just aren't able to really reflect or identify that.
And that's only one.
Mm-hmm. What kind of a bird do we consider the eagle to be?
Prey bird. Bird of prey.
Yes. It's a predator, isn't it? A bird of prey. So it's out looking for those who are dead or wounded. So for that to come in such a way that no one misses it, the same way that it's referred to when Christ will return. The whole world's going to know. We're not going to have to guess. This eagle came in the same way. It's that big of an announcement that this interlude is making for us to get ready for these next trumpets to sound. Now, if there's any in here who have doubts about Satan, you may not like this next chapter because he's real. So let's look in chapter 9 and let's read the first 4 verses. All right.
Angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from heaven's place. The key to the shaft of the abyss was given to him. He opened the shaft of the abyss, and smoke came out of the shaft, like smoke from a great furnace, so that the sun and the air were darkened by the smoke from the shaft. And locusts came out of the smoke onto the earth, and power was given to them like the power that scorpions have on the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only people who do not have God's seal on their foreheads. They were not permitted to.
You can stop there. That's okay. So who was that angel being that was thrust out of heaven? Satan. But what did God have them give to him? Key to where? And what does he do with that key? He opens the shaft to the abyss, and out comes, or the bottomless pit, if you please, and smoke, like the smoke of a great furnace, flowed out of the pit. And the sun and the atmosphere were darkened. Now we're thrust into complete smoke and dark from the pit. But then, you remember the 10 plagues? I went back and read about the locusts. Now, there's some things that I was telling Tom I thought was interesting. When God brought the plagues on Egypt, they didn't happen in the land of Goshen. They did not affect God's people. They only affected those who were keeping them in bondage. It's the same as what we're seeing here. Do you notice in verse 4, it says, you are instructed not to hurt the people who are sealed by God. God's elect will not be harmed in this. So we would surmise that even the demons have to obey when God tells them something. They don't have total permission to do whatever they want to do. God is still in control, and God is still doing all of this from the throne in heaven. Nothing's happening. Nothing has happened to the earth, the sea, or the rivers that God didn't orchestrate to start with. Nothing has happened on earth that God did not have control over. Now, if that requires a lot of faith, then I hope you grow in that faith, because it's the truth. So after we see that they were told not to harm the ones who were marked with the seal of God, and we talked about that last week, then they were not permitted to kill anyone, but only, are you ready for this? To torment and cause them extreme pain. You don't get to die. You just get to suffer a horrendous torment and pain, but for just a short time. God only allows this for how many months? 5 months. Now that could seem like a long time if you're the ones that's enduring this, right? Mm-hmm.
Curiosity, when I was reading through this, I kept circling back to that you have to use your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it will actually, in my thinking about it, it's not actually a full focus with the scorpion's tail, but is this going to be something like just a bunch of evil spirits that are basically tormenting and not killing, but tormenting and disabling people?
Yeah, it's like a prelude to going to hell.
Yeah.
It's a good way to look at it. Good imagination. I like that.
Well, I don't have to have any imagination. In Reno, Nevada, where my sister lives, they had an attack of these bugs that were this long. And they came and covered so many parts of the area in Reno for a month or two, and it was horrible. And so I think the people in Reno hopefully some of them got the message, because it was horrible, people. So it was
I love it.
She sent me pictures, and it does have, God still is doing that sometimes.
Yes, he is. A lot more than we want to think.
Locusts, the horned crickets. Oh, okay, I missed that. I was there around Vegas when the Mormon crickets came through.
Oh.
And there were hordes. It looked like the ground was awash with these things.
Yes.
And we had planned on camping in now. They were huge.
Well, they got your attention.
The front of our motorcycles, our legs, our boots,
Mm.
everything was covered. It was just like chocolate or caramel.
Oh my.
I didn't really taste the caramel.
I still like caramel.
Oh, y'all are a mess.
We just tell the truth.
Uh-huh. I think I like what Van said about they're not necessarily locusts that sting like scorpions, but it just gives you the understanding. I don't know how many of you even have been around scorpions or know what long tails they have. They have a little, yes. Yeah, I have been. So yeah, I know. So as we look at this, I think what we want to picture is the big picture of the pain, the extreme pain and torment that God allows Satan's demons to put forth on the unrepentant. You know, you might think, gosh, surely they'd cry out to God for relief, right? I would. They've got 5 months of this.
But it's too late.
And then it says, and in those days people will seek death and will not find it. And they will long to die, but death evades them. Can you imagine? Does anyone ever have a recollection of that kind of sorrow and pain and desire for death? we fight so hard not to experience death. We want all the newest treatments. We want anything there is to alleviate whatever illness we might have that could lead to death. And we've done a good job. I mean, we have lots of things, don't we, David? He works on that, so we're thankful for it. But there was no relief, not even, they couldn't die. They couldn't die. I read one person who had been in captivity with Hamas all these days and months and years. And they said, you know, you were so tortured and so tormented in so many ways, any way that you can think of to remove your humanity, that they prayed for death. And they didn't want them to die. They wanted to continue torturing them. And it was horrible. Said, you cannot even imagine. Even if I tell you, they said, you cannot imagine how horrible it was. That's what I think this 5 months was like, when the demons had them captured and could do what they wanted to them. So then the next part we're going to look at, the locusts appear to be even bigger this time and more harmful. Let's read 7, 8, 9, and I think 10 and 11. 7 through 11.
The locusts looked like horses prepared for battle. On their heads they wore something like crowns of gold, and their faces resembled human faces. Their hair was like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the sound of their wings was like the thundering of many horses and chariots rushing into battle. They had tails with stingers like scorpions, and in their tails they had power to torment people for 5 minutes. They had as king over them the angel of the abyss, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek is Apollyon, that is destroyer.
Well, now we know who's leading the march, don't we? What do you think about this? John has just made it even more horrendous in what was out seeking to destroy. Horses are used because that's before a battle. That's always telling us a battle is coming. And these demons have been doing what God has given them permission to do, but they have as their king the angel of the abyss, and his name is Destroyer. Do you think of Satan as a destroyer? He destroys marriages, he destroys lives, he destroys careers, he destroys governments, he destroys everything we can think of that would be near and dear to us. He is truly the destroyer king. And with this, the first woe has passed. We made it through. However, it says, behold, 2 woes are still coming after these things. It gets worse. So the 6th trumpet is going to announce war. And you know how much we do not want war, right? We hate war. I looked back at some of our wars and it was shocking. The destruction, the loss of life, the loss of economics, the loss of everything. Even it bled back into, because men were gone so long in those world wars, that families were destroyed. Everything we can think of was destroyed by war. And this war that we're going to look at is not just a war. It's symbolic of wars past, present, and coming. So when you see that, war is, I think there's a term, war is hell. And so when we think of war, it's something we all fear and we dread and we don't want, even if we feel it's necessary. And I'm assuming that somebody thinks these things are necessary when we end up caught up in the middle of them. So as we look to this next part, the last part of chapter 9, I want us to imagine what this could feel like in our world today. Let's read 13 through 21.
The sixth angel sounded his trumpet, and I heard a voice coming from the four horns of the golden altar that is before God. It said to the sixth angel who had the trumpet, "Release the four angels who are bound at the great river Euphrates."
Go ahead.
And the four angels who had kept ready for this very hour and day and month and year were released to kill a third of mankind. The number of the mounted troops was twice 10,000 times 10,000. I heard their number. Their horses and riders I saw in my vision looked like this. The breastplates were fiery red, dark blue, and yellow and sulfur. The heads of the horses resembled the heads of lions, and out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and sulfur. A third of mankind was killed by 3 plagues of fire, smoke, and sulfur that came out of their mouths. The power of the horses was in their mouths and in their tails, for the tails were like snakes having heads with which they inflict injury. The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues still did not repent of the work of their hands. They did not stop worshiping demons and idols of gold, silver, bronze, stone, and wood, idols that cannot see or hear or walk, nor did they repent of their murders, their magical arts, their sexual immorality, or their thefts.
In this sixth one, we find the dark powers of the fifth trumpet carrying on their work of destruction in the hearts of men and change men into demons, because that's what war many times does. And so as we look at this, we find the 4 angels who had been prepared for the appointed hour. They weren't released until this very moment. These are ones that were waiting for their orders. And the troops, that equaled up to 2 million, which is 200 million, which is an inconceivable number that John is giving us to understand how magnificent and how horrible this war will be. And they just kept marching. They were a cavalry of marching horses. And now we find what their riders look like in his vision. The riders had breastplates of fire and sapphire blue and brimstone of yellow, and the heads of the horses looked like the heads of lions. Wow. And that's not even all of it, because out of their mouths came fire, smoke, and brimstone. Again, we feel like we're being reminded of hell. These are terms we use with demons and with hell, and with the torture and the punishment and the death of that. And another third of mankind was killed by these 3 plagues, and by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone that came out of the mouths of the horses. But the power of the horses is not in their mouth, it's in their tails. What do you make of that? Their tails are like serpents and have heads, and it is with them that they do harm. So where do you think the death came from?
Serpents have poison in their mouth.
Mhm.
to us.
So they're riding through 200 million strong, or a large number. And everything those tails whip and hit and bite, die. Everything. So God has brought all these catastrophes. He's brought a third of the earth to destruction, a third of the sea to destruction, a third of the star, the moon, and the sun to destruction, the inland waters to destruction. And then he brought more destruction. And now he has brought this captivating death and destruction to another third. And we would all think that somebody was paying attention, right? I think the two most important verses in our lesson today are 20 and 21. They're the most telling. The rest of mankind who were not killed by these plagues, because we've got a third and a third right now, who were not killed by these plagues, did not repent, even then, of the works of their hands, so as to cease worshiping and paying homage to the demons and the idols of gold, silver, bronze, and of stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. And they did not repent of their murders, nor their sorceries, that is, drugs and intoxication of drugs, nor of their sexual immorality, nor of their thefts. You have to just breathe after you read that, you know? A third of everything we've known, a third of mankind, and a third of mankind again. And yet, no. They did not give up their idolatry. They did not give up their worship of gold and silver, which is money. They did not give up their immorality. They did not give up their sorcery, which is interpreted as drugs and intoxication of things that are intoxicating. They didn't give up anything that was normal to them. So if you are one of those who believe everyone will be saved before Christ returns, I would file that in file 13. Because even at this point, God's done everything. God has sent his Son, who was love and kindness, and he taught people what God wanted. He said, God only wants two things: love the Lord your God with your whole heart, your mind, and your soul, and love your neighbor as yourself. Who is my neighbor? Whoever God brings into your path to love. We didn't follow that. And then he sent the church as a light. The lampstands, you remember? And Christ is in the middle of them. And he sent those into the world to be a witness and a testimony. It didn't matter. And now he has sent tragedy and crisis and destruction. Nothing he does is getting their attention.
Recently, there was that big, huge earthquake somewhere. People saw on the news.
Mm-hmm.
It's still happening.
Mm-hmm. It is. This gives us a real understanding that there is a battle going on that is a spiritual battle that we're not seeing sometimes. And I've told you before, my husband loves to say, now, Beverly, It's not what's going on right now. There's this other battle going on, and we're just experiencing some of the results of it, the consequences. We never want to forget that Christ has a battle to fight. And the consummation of the age will come to light when that final battle comes to surface. And so the next 2 chapters we're going to take up in 2 weeks will finish this first half of Revelation. If you see it in 2 parts, this is the 2 parts, which I think works well. 1 through 11, and then we're going to take 12 to the end. And so that's something we'll be doing in the next month and a half, 2 months. We're going to try to finish this by the end of January, I hope. So please read 10 and 11 because they close out this part and they're very, very significant and important to the coming of the consummation of the age. Okay? Any questions or comments? Yes?
Yeah. Could I make a comment going back to the marvelous, asking for